Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Wingate Solutions. I hope you're doing well. Today's video is going to be about SPR builds, or special purpose rifle builds. All right, let's get into it. All right, guys, SPR, special purpose rifle build. To start out, I'm referring to an SPR as a generalized term I think is mostly accepted nowadays as being like a magnified rifle that can reach out and touch things a little better, but still can be handy enough for shorter distances. So it's a kind of a step above in a way of like a general purpose build. So it's more specialized at distance rather than being fully well-rounded, right? So if you haven't seen my general purpose rifle video, go ahead and check that out. So I'm going to kind of bounce off of that one and use some of the similar things I talked about in that. I'm going to flow through the components a little faster on this one just because a lot of it is redundant, and I'll kind of get into that as I go. But in general, SPR, special purpose rifle, special purpose receiver is what it originally was. Before anybody gets upset that I'm using the wrong terms, I'm using that term as just a generalized magnified optic build for the most part, right? Now, it kind of goes back to like the recce rifle builds. I put that in quotes because it's the same thing, right? Like when that concept was first kind of brought up in the civilian space, like AR15.com, guys were really diving into the recce rifle concept years and years ago. This is when like people didn't know how to pronounce recce, right? Like that just shows how it's been a bit now. But guys got so upset if somebody called their rifle a recce rifle if it didn't have the specific barrel profile, or it was a nitrided barrel, or had this optic on it. Like that's not where I'm going at all with this. I'm actually the opposite of that, right? So just like so don't get so lost in the weeds on the terminology of the platform, right? But in general, enough of that. We're going to get into this now. So my magnified rifle setups like this, they err a lot closer to general purpose for me than special purpose. I still consider them my SPRs just because it's easier to kind of categorize them as that. But there's not a lot different to these rifles than my general purpose rifles, and I'll flow through it. The big difference that everybody can see is optic platform, and I'll get into that in a minute. I'm first going to go through a little bit of what I use, why I use it for the actual rifle, right? So barrel's important, barrel and bolt carrier, and I explained that in my GPR video, and then I completely forgot to talk to you guys about bolt carriers, so I'm going to bring that up right now. Bolt carrier groups before I forget. I'm a big fan of toolcraft. So if I'm building a rifle from the ground up, just picking components out and putting it together, I know that's another topic, right? I'm building / putting a rifle together. Again, it's just getting lost in the weeds of terms. A lot of guys get kind of butthurt. It's like, oh, you build an AK, you just basically Lego together an AR. Yeah. It's kind of true. If you have proper tools, putting together a rifle isn't really building it. You're just assembling it, right? But again, I don't kind of get into that mindset. I'm going to use build as a term on this channel, and whatever, if it triggers you, then go elsewhere. But either way, if I'm building a rifle, toolcraft bolt carrier groups are my preferred. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, they're the OEM supplier to a lot of other bigger name companies who then just slap their logo on them and charge a lot more. When I can, I'll get a Carpenter 158 bolt. But I run 9130 bolts as well, and I've had good luck with them. In theory, if they're not QC'd or without getting into it, there's potential for the 9130s in theory to be not as strong as the Carpenter 158s, but I haven't had any issues with the 9130s. So either way, I go with the Toolcraft bolt carrier group, try to get it as cheap as possible. I'll go through like Armor Ally. There's a couple other ones, I think maybe like Right to Bear. There's a few places that'll sell them as Toolcraft OEM bolts, and I really like them. I've had good luck with them, and I did have one issue, and wasn't the bolts failure. It was just I had an extractor shear off on a Carpenter 158 bolt. Toolcraft sent me a whole new bolt. They didn't even just replace the extractor. They sent the whole new bolt to me, and I sent mine in just for them to check out, which was pretty cool. So they're willing to stand behind their product, and that was kind of a fluke, but it happens. There's going to be things that fall through QC, or just the metal just has an issue. But anyway, Toolcraft, I like them. Barrels. I really like the Ballistic Advantage Hansen profile barrels. Now, here's going to be a point of debate on an SPR, like a true SPR build, and well, not even a true one, right? I'm not getting into those weeds. A more common SPR barrel is going to be something like an 18-inch heavier profile, H-bar SPR profile barrel. It's going to have a lot more meat to it, and it's going to be definitely for just reaching out and touching things, having a lot of mass. It's going to be probably a rifle length gas system, really smooth shooters, and they're going to be really accurate barrels. And I've used a lot of 18-inch heavy profile barrels, and they are nice. I've started leaning back towards Hansen profile barrel, so a tapered barrel for being a little handier with a can on the front. Now I go back and forth because every once in a while I want to change one of these guys up and make it an 18 again, because I just love the 18-inch rifle length. But for right now, I'm running a 16-inch Hansen on both of these setups, and I'll get into that one in a minute. I like the pin gas block. I like the taper profile, and they shoot really well for the price. Suppressor. This is Dead Air Sandman K. This one has an e-brake on it. Now, my latest video was testing some of these rifles under low light conditions, because I felt it was the easiest way to take out the variables of differing lights between rifles. So I did it pitch black. I wanted to see what kind of flash came out of these guns. I used 55 grain AAC and 75 grain AAC. And to put it short, this little K can, even with this e-brake on, because it does change the flash signature, this thing was spicy in low light. Some big fireballs came out of this guy. But either way, I still really like this can. I just might want to experiment with throwing a flashlight or end cap on it at some point. So yeah, Sandman K on this guy. And I'll stick to the front now. I'm here. Bipod. I run this with the bipod mount, the M-LOK mount, all the time. I don't always run the bipod though. I'll throw it on as I feel like it. Because again, I go back to these being leaning more towards general purpose rifles for me, but I like the ability to throw bipod on. So I will go between two different sizes. I like the Harris. This one is the 9-13, and then I have the 6-9 on the other rifle. And I like having both sizes. In the field, like here out in the woods, I find the 9-13 way more practical than the 6-9. At the range, like literally the flat range, the 6-9 is going to be more practical for most people. But having the longer bipod for more organic atmosphere, like out in the woods like this, I got logs, I got different micro terrain. If I'm getting down to lay prone, the shorter bipod might not allow me to get high enough. So I think having that 9-13 really works for me. I like having the swivel version of the Harris, and I really like the notched legs. And all right, backup sights, I have them. Kind of go over this in my general purpose video. I don't think it's needed with most optic platforms nowadays. It's just personal preference. I don't mind having them on there because they don't weigh much, if anything, at all. And they're just there. I like having them. It's kind of more peace of mind knowing I have them. Here, lights. This one has the newer Streamlight HLX Pro. I'm loving this light so far. The new tail cap supposedly fixes the issues with the tail cap problems. And I'm not a pressure pad guy, so I don't run pressure pad. But the old pressure pads on the regular HLXs were a failure point. So they've supposedly fixed that. Now, it still has the button on the back, but it also has the standard plug for your pressure pads. And Supposedly it's a pretty nice design. I just like to run the button. If anything, I would prefer this cap to only have the button on the back, but that's okay. It still works. It's still tactile enough for me to get up there and index off of it. But yeah, handguard. I really like these CMT rails. I have a Bravo company on the one behind me. I'll get to that in a second. CMT rails, cross machine and tool, I found for the price are really stout and they're pretty dang squared away. I like them a lot. Just a Weekend Warrior Customs hand stop. Again, I kind of hit it on my last video. That's my brother's company, so I am affiliated with them, at least by family relation. I love it. He makes me stuff I like. So if you want to go check them out, Weekend Warrior Customs. He does Cerakote work and a lot of 3D printing and a lot of CAD type design. So if you're in the industry and you want something purposely designed, you might want to look into him. Weekend Warrior Customs. All right, that was my shameless plug on him that I wasn't planning on doing, but I did it anyway. And while I'm at it, my rifle slings, my sling retention straps, I've done videos on them if you want to go check them out. So see if it's something you want. But my wife and I make these. My wife sews them, I build them. 2-point minimalist slings and sling retention straps. That's over on our website. Link down in the description. Anyway, swing this guy around. All right. Standard upper lower. I have mil-spec components. Trigger though, I'm a big fan of the LaRue MBT-2S. Same as my general purpose rifle. I like to keep my rifles consistent across the board. When I find something I like, I stick it in whatever rifles I have for the most part. Unless it's like, just a cheap budget spare that I don't want to spend any extra money on. But if it's rifles I actually use often, I want them to be as consistent as possible. So I'm running the same triggers, the same setup, same light placement, same hand stop placement. I keep everything the exact same so that it's intuitive, right? So that LaRue trigger is a really good bang for the buck, but I think they have gone up a little bit in price over the years. So, it is what it is. Still considered a budget precision type trigger. All right. Stock. Just the Magpul. I don't remember what this one is. STR maybe? It works. I kind of like it on my SPR builds. It helps me a little bit when I'm using that top dot for sure. Adds a little bit of weight to the back though, which is fine for me running the can and or the bipod on the front because it kind of balances out a little bit. Buffer system, I'm just running that Damaged Industries buffer spring. I really like those enhanced buffer springs. They're only a few bucks and they're great. This one, just an H buffer. When I can, I try to throw H buffers in my rifles unless they really need an H2. Usually going from like a carbine to an H buffer is going to smooth things out. So if you have a standard budget rifle and you want to try to, on the cheap, kind of see if you can just get it to run a little more smooth, try just an H buffer without going crazy into changing up tuning and things like that. H buffers are usually something I recommend for like your standard 16-inch mid-length. They usually run really well that way. Anyway, another jumping around topic. I like 20-round mags for SPRs and just in general, especially if I'm going to run a bipod or if I'm going to have this in a bag. Optics. I am a huge fan. Like if there's one optic that I would say is my favorite optic, and I have 3 of them, is this GLX primary arms 2.5 to 10. It's by far my favorite optic I've run. Made in the Philippines, I believe. So it's a step up from their China scopes. And I absolutely love everything about it. I'll do a more in-depth review on these at some point. But I like that mid-range optic design. I like having the full usable magnification across the whole adjustment range. On this, that 2.5 to 10 is like the sweet spot for me. And this kind of goes back to, this is a little more general purpose than some guys are going to like 4 to 16s, 3 to 18s, whatever other magnification range on an optic. And they're going to definitely err more towards it being a precision scope, which not saying this one isn't, it definitely is. It's just on the lower magnification range. And then the actual reticle choice is going to differ too, depending on your use case. So these two are actually their BDC reticle, which I go back and forth on. It's definitely not the most popular choice for like a precision build. If you're really getting into precision, Running a mill-based Christmas tree reticle is just going to be better for that. I wanted this one to be more of that quick, down and dirty, get on target at different distances. And if I understand my holds and how the reticle works and where I may need to air a little bit high on the BDC reticle for certain distances, I kind of know that. But it's not going to be as precise as having that Christmas tree reticle. For me, I don't dial often, but if I do need to have a more specific dope, I'm going to dial these turrets. And I trust these turrets. They're really well designed. I absolutely love the locking feature on these. It's awesome. I love the button. These aren't going to spin on you when you're not using it, or if you're running around doing things. It's not going to inadvertently get pushed. And if it does, it's real easy to check and just relock it. And I haven't had it happen to me at all. I like an optic like this to have a side focus. It's just going to be one less variable when it comes to shooting at distance, that you can confirm that your parallax and everything else is all good to go. I like having that side focus a lot. Illumination on it, I honestly don't use it. It's cool to have. I'm right having it. I just don't use it, and I'll get into the dot in a second because that kind of correlates to that. I like having a bubble level on my optics, especially my more precision optics. So this one is just like a Lone Star Precision, I believe. It was an Amazon brand. I think they're a Texas-based company, but they're foreign made. Like, for the price, I don't think these are USA made bubble levels, but I don't really mind. It's something, if I'm throwing on a few rifles, it's fine. Because you can get pretty expensive getting a little bubble level, but I run it on the bottom, so upside down, and that's for my left eye to be able to see it when my right eye is still looking through the optic. I shoot two eyes open even with a magnified optic. And if you can, I recommend that. It takes a little bit of training, but I like having my whole world not just being sucked into the glass. So I like running the bubble level. And again, that comes back to precision shooting. Every variable you can take away and have consistency in is going to make it that much more effective at hitting whatever target you're trying to hit at distance. So having your scope actually level to the target in the ground is going to allow you to make better hits and be more consistent. But anyway, I really like running these 2.5 to 10s from Primary Arms. They're not cheap, but they're also not expensive either. I would put this up against scopes that are twice as expensive as this one, personally. Now, your miles may vary. You might not like the reticles in them. I found this is so far my favorite reticle design for this range of scope, because at 2.5, it is really useful. A lot of times you'll get one that's designed at the top end, so at 10x or 12x, 16, whatever, it'll have a really nice reticle, but then you dial it back to 2.5, being first focal plane, the reticle is barely visible, right? So they usually are designed to favor one or the other. Primary Arms did a really awesome job of designing this to really work well at 2.5 and 10. Now at 10, you're going to have thicker, the horseshoe is going to be visible in the outside of your optic, your glass rather, inside your glass. And some people might not like that. It might be distracting. I don't find it being an issue. And I leave this thing on 2.5 most of the time. And when I stretch it out at the 10x, it's more than doable for me. I haven't had it be an issue. So it's been, for me, the sweet spot of reticle design for this style of optic. Anyway, that was a little bit of a deep dive into this optic. Same Night Force mount that I run on my general purpose rifle. Not cheap, but worth it. I really like the design of them. They're pretty lightweight and they're stout. And I'm not a big QD scope mount guy. I like to just set it, forget it, torque it on there to specs and leave it, right? So I really like this Night Force Unimount. It's the 1.5 height. All right, PRI, Precision Reflex Inc. mount for this RMR mount for this Holosun rather. I really like this setup a lot. If I did it again, I might run something enclosed, just for like living where I am with snow and things like that. Open emitter is gonna be perfectly fine in the rain for the most part, but having an enclosed emitter up there may be a little more peace of mind. And most of these rifles I run are going to be on some kind of Arca plate, because I really like being able to QD this in and out of a tripod, or that kind of precision shooting. All right, I'll get this guy out of the way and we'll bust out the other one real quick. So I like consistency of my platforms. So same exact barrel profile. It's a Hansen profile 16-inch from Ballistic Advantage again. It's going to have a Toolcraft bolt carrier in it. I think this one has a 9130, which is fine. It's been great for me. This one's got a ton of rounds on it at this point, where the other one's actually fairly a newer build. I built that one to kind of be a clone of this one because I liked it so much. So I've had this one for a long time, and it's had a few variations along the way, but this is what it's settled on the last couple of years. And it's just like my preferred setup. So even though this is more of a special purpose setup for me, it almost becomes more of a general purpose, like I've said. And that's where I live, right? I'm out in the woods. I have property. I have a homestead. I like having a rifle like this at the ready that can do a lot for me. I can reach out and touch something if there's a coyote or something that needs to be taken care of. I also have the dot on top for anything closer up, heads up shooting. I can run this with night vision. I can do a lot of things with this rifle. And for me, it's not unwieldy. And again, I go back to that in my general purpose video, is your rifle setup like this might be completely different. A lot of guys really like the mini SPR setups, and I think that's really cool. It's not for me. Again, being like a 6'4" bigger human, I like having a full length rail. I like having a little bit longer barrel. I like having the velocity. But a lot of guys are running like 11.5, 12.5s, 13.7, 13.9 mini SPRs, and they're pretty neat. Now, you're going to have to understand the dope for that rifle, just like any other rifle. There might be a little bit of challenges with that, but if it becomes a handier setup for you because you're like an average size guy or a smaller guy, and it allows you to still reach out and touch things with a little bit of work, but you can be handy enough to run that rifle at closer distances as well, that's where those little mini SPRs are really cool. For me, this is almost like a mini SPR because it's just a 16 instead of like an 18 or 20 inch, right? If I was running without a can, this would probably be a 20 inch setup, just because I want that extra velocity. But yeah, so the big thing here that I know some people are probably screaming at because it's probably triggered them so bad that they're losing their mind is it has key mod on it, right? And who cares? Yes, M-LOK is going to be a little stronger, but I've never had an issue with this key mod rail enough to make me want to spend the $200 to swap it out. It just works. So anybody that gets a little crazy about it being key mod, it doesn't matter. A rifle's a rifle, especially when it comes to that. It's just how you bolt things on. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. So anyway, same exact setup, right? So everything is pretty much exactly the same, except that this one has the M4E1 lower from Arrow, but it's still just mil-spec components, still that LaRue trigger, still that same buffer system, same barrel, same optics platform and everything. It just has different backup sights because, again, I hit it on earlier. Who really cares? I don't see myself using them. I just like to have them because they weigh next to nothing. This one has a kind of a handguard. It was originally on a different rifle. I've moved it over to this one. It's not Wiseman Company. You can buy it at Wiseman Company. Lunar Concepts Hot Pocket, really cool. Especially if you're shooting suppressed and you're getting the rifle really hot, it does help keep your hand from getting burned. Because I'm not a big fan of wearing gloves, so I don't wear gloves unless it's really cold and I have to wear gloves. So it's nice to have something like this if you're going to get this thing pretty spicy and hot in the summertime, especially too. It's going to keep your hands from getting burned up. Because it doesn't matter how cool and tough you are, like burning your hands is not fun, right? Let's be honest. So just another bubble level on here. It's a different brand, but I still have in the exact same place again for that familiarity. And I hit on it with the general purpose build. I'm a big fan of having that top dot to get on target at distance and then sink down into the optic, and it's pretty much right there, which is really cool. Now, I was doing that today when I was getting a little practicing with this before this video, and where I'm shooting, this is a relatively new range for me. I just moved here a few months ago, really, so I haven't really ironed out some of my shooting lanes. So when I'm getting back, and when I say I'm getting back, like I'm still only like 100 yards at this spot at the moment, but with all the limbs and saplings and dead branches and everything in the way, I can still see a safe distance of where I'm shooting. I'm not blindly shooting into the woods, but if I'm going to just get on magnification and try to find that steel target up in the woods, it can be a challenge because there's so much going on. There's not as much reference point because it's just a sea of big trees and tiny saplings everywhere, right? So being able to find that target in the red dot and sink down behind the glass, huge benefit there. So I really like that. The other reason I like having this type of optic for this type of shooting, even within 100 yards, even if I'm not stretching out far, is for that same purpose of being so much stuff in the way. If I was to just be shooting with a red dot or just shooting at 1x, I might be able to see the general area of the target, but I can't positively ID anything. So without getting into it contextually too much, even just talking about a black silhouette steel plate down there, it was challenging to be able to see, am I going to be hitting a 3-inch branch that's in between me and there? Or can I even see the full target to make sure it's the right intended target I'm trying to shoot at 1x, right? Where at magnification, I can see through all of that brush and I can pick a specific part on the plate even to air one side or the other that is more open and doesn't have as much debris in the way. Magnification really shines there in this type of environment for me. So just one extra thing there, right? So we're all used to going to a range and having it be complete open field and really bright contrasted targets against a different color background. And yeah, you could take a red dot and shoot those distances pretty effectively. And the guys that are going to say, I can shoot to 600 yards with my red dot. Sure. Like I'm not going to straight up face value say you can't. I want to see you do it, but can you positively ID anything at that distance? Even talking about shooting steel plates, right? Can you really see what's going on if that steel target was relatively the same color as the background you're shooting? No, like you're at that point just referencing an area with that and putting that dot there, understanding your holdover, and you're just sending it. But to be frank, contextually, real world, I need to be able to positively ID what I'm actually going to be pressing triggers on, right? And that's a little bit outside the scope of this video, but just something to think about. Having magnification for me is important if I intend to shoot at distance. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but you're going to be limited if you don't have magnification to not be able to positively ID as effectively, if that makes sense. So yeah, kind of got into it a little bit there, but anyway, I'm just a big fan of magnification. I always have been. I've never been somebody to want just 1x, and that's me coming from a background where all I ever use is a red dot. I still have always liked magnified optics on rifles way before I got into this kind of work professionally. And that's just me. If you're a red dot guy, red dot magnifier, you like Trijicon, Prism, that sort of thing, I go back to that in my general purpose video, and I'll get more into optics as we go. But run what you like to run. Don't just copy other people's things. Don't copy what's the in flavor of the day right now. If you're into something, do it. Train with it, get really awesome at it, and then become effective with it if you intend to use this sort of stuff, whether it's for fun like this or if you do this stuff for real world purposes. Anyway, there I'm getting on my soapbox again. Same exact setup sling wise, one of my sling strap. This is that 6-9 bipod, so it's a little bit shorter. And on this one, I'm running just the regular HLX Streamlight, so not the Pro. And it's been great for me. I know a lot of people have had issues with these over the years, tail cap issues, the pressure pad issues. I don't run the pressure pad, so I can't really speak from that. And they've been effective enough for me to be satisfied with them as far as their light output. They got a decent hot spot to them. They got a good amount of spill. That HLX Pro, though, way better hot spot for throwing at distance. I really like that, what they've done with the head on those. And I'm pretty sure, now you'd have to look into part numbers to see when they switched. So I'm pretty sure even their HLX model that's still out, there's a pretty good chance you got the updated head on that, even if it's not the Pro, which is pretty cool because it's definitely a big improvement over the regular HLX. And for the price, either of these two are still, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck if you're on a budget and you just want something that's going to work. Streamlights are fine. Yeah, foreign made, but they're proven. There's more of these out there in existence as far as rifle and pistol lights that have been, used every single day, and they can break just like anything else can, but in general, they're pretty dang reliable. So I recommend this as a nice budget weapon light for somebody getting into this sort of stuff, right? Charging handles on these, I didn't really talk about that. This goes back to my general purpose video. I'm either going to run a 7075 mil-spec charging handle or that medium latched BCM charging handle on a few of my builds. Those are the two I like because I don't like the charging handle getting in the way of stuff. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, and I'm sure I'm going to get a few comments on this. Paint job, right? I'm going to get into that in a future video. Wait until we have some nice weather, which today probably would have actually been a nice day to do it, but I didn't have anything prepped and ready to go. But I'm going to get probably a deep dive into how I paint my rifles. I've probably painted dozens at this point, and I have some styles I think most guys are going to like. They're a real simple way that I paint these. Because I've been doing it for a while and I have some good tips and tricks on that. So stay tuned for that. Let me know though if that's what you want to see. It kind of drives my content making, seeing what guys want to see from me. So I appreciate when you guys give me comments on that sort of thing. All right, guys, that's going to conclude the video. I really appreciate you watching. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. Hit that thumbs up button, that like button, and comment down below. I really enjoy reading them. If you want to support us in any other way, you can head over to the website, wingatesolutionsllc.com. We got handmade rifle slings, sling retention straps, a few other products I'm waiting to release. And if you want to see any updates on those products, head over to my Instagram, follow me over there at Wingate Solutions. That's usually where I'll kind of give a heads up that I'm putting out a new colorway or putting out something new. So that's an easy way to kind of get some up-to-date news on the channel. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Till next time, get out and train.